to have a conversation, but I'm so glad to finally meet you face to face. It's, your name absolutely precedes you, so I just...
Thank you.
Yeah, so...
I'm actually blushing now.
For our audience who are probably going to be listening, my name is Lynn McKenzie. I'm the immigration lead here at Relocation Africa. I've been here for about 8 months, and it's been a wonderful journey thus far to be able to be learning this new industry, a new dimension for myself. But it's all about you today. So I want to know more about you, Kunle, just about a little bit about your background and sort of how did you get into this work, and tell us about a little bit about Bloomfield law practice.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for having me here. My name is Kunle Obebe. I practice law in Nigeria. I've always practiced law in Nigeria. Somebody asked me a question about that. And I've always practiced law in Nigeria. I currently manage Bloomfield law practice. The firm started off as an immigration and employment law practice strictly, but we've I think 4 or 5 years ago, we diversified into other practice areas.
Okay.
So it's a specialized practice law firm that we don't service everyone. We have some specific areas that we service people. Okay. The firm has been around for 13 years. We were 13 this year, so
wow.
we're a teenage firm. So it's because of the size of the market, there's a lot of opportunity in Nigeria, and that's what we've tried to harness with Bloomfield. The firm has grown from strength to strength. The firm's specific practice areas have also been our differentiation in the market.
Okay.
That has allowed us to actually grow exponentially.
Yes.
Currently, there are about 3 partners.
Okay.
And 13 associates.
Oh wow.
Yeah, okay. So a number. It's a small firm compared to other firms in Nigeria. But that's a bit about Bloomfield law practice, and it's a growing practice because the opportunities are endless in Nigeria because of our size.
Okay.
Also because of the potential that we have as well, because we are in Africa.
Yes.
So that's a bit about.
And then with regards to the specialties you mentioned, you said it started off as sort of employment and immigration. Can you tell us what are the other areas that you help? And are you strictly for corporates, multinationals, or do you also assist private individuals?
Yeah, so we serve both corporates and high net worth individuals.
Okay.
Yeah, so I head the immigration and the employment law practice. I have another partner that heads energy and power, which is a mainstay in Nigeria.
Yes.
And the third one does aviation and shipping. He also heads the litigation practice. So it's as we always tell everyone, it's a specialized practice because we don't service everyone.
Yes.
But the clients we service are mostly multinationals that are doing businesses in Nigeria.
Okay.
So beyond just helping them with their expats that are coming into the country, we're also able to assist them with setting up their various local entities as well, and also getting the various regulatory permits that are required for their various industries.
Oh, well, that's good. So it's sort of like a one-stop shop. So they don't have to go and find other support from another, establishment that can help them start their business. You sort of take them through
so
the
for that,
legalities of that.
Exactly. For that, their particular industry, we're able to service them through the process.
I see. Oh, that's great. Have you always been doing that? Or is that something recent? Because personally, we're also starting to look at being able to assist companies, particularly ones that want to invest in the country, but they are not in full operation. So they still need to get their licenses, make sure that their business is desirable in South Africa, that it's going to contribute to the economy, and all those types of details. Yeah. So that's really interesting if that's something you've evolved to.
Yes.
Yeah, because
exactly.
you saw the need, I'm sure, as we did too.
Exactly. That's actually the word, evolution.
Yeah.
Because that's you have to at some point look at the market that you service and look at particularly the needs that are there and see if you can meet those needs. Yes. I think in a sense that's where everyone is going to now because we are all evolving.
Yes.
The market itself is unpredictable at the moment.
It really is. It really is. Are you seeing any decrease in volumes? Are you seeing with everything that's really going on? I mean, which I know we'll talk about a little bit later, but what can you see from the beginning of this year that has changed from your experience these last 13 years?
Yeah, so there's a word that when people used to hear last year, they'll be happy and jump on the table, Corona, which is the Corona bear. But now when you hear the word Corona, everybody's just, it's unfortunate that that's where the world is now.
Yes.
It's a pandemic that has definitely hit the market, the global market this time.
Yes.
And it's, I feel that companies are still going to feel the effect when things settle down, when all the dust settles down and people return to work and everything goes back to normal. So by the third or the fourth quarter, there's definitely going to be a lot of changes happening. What the companies have to do to ensure that they're still able to do business.
Yes, of course.
So in a sense, there will definitely be a reduction. We've all already seen a reduction happening, even from the beginning of the year. Yes. But this has been the case for like 3-4 years now. So what we have seen is there's been a reduction in the companies that are looking at bringing in experts for long-term work assignment.
Yes.
And the reason for that is because businesses are starting to look at the cost implication of having the whole family move to a country, and instead of having that, they are looking at how they can have the individual come into the country for short-term assignments. So they come in and they do what they have to do on short-term assignments. So there's been a reduction in long-term assignments, but there's been an increase in short-term assignments.
Yes.
There's also been an increase in business visa applications, which means that some people for some countries are going into work illegally.
Yes, that's definitely been something that we've experienced as well.
So that also has been a trend. Then you would have people come in like stealth workers. They just do what they have to do and they leave.
Yes.
So there's been an increase in that as well.
Yes.
But as I always tell everyone, there's always an opportunity in. So what that means, therefore, is that you're looking at how one can increase consular work.
Yes.
So that means that you can assist them with maybe applying for visa on arrival for countries that have the visa on arrival permit.
Yes.
So Nigeria had introduced that about 3-4 years ago, and we've noticed that has become an opportunity for us. Lots of companies that are looking at having their individuals come into the country to have meetings. Instead of them going to the embassy to apply for the visa. They can just submit the application for the visa on arrival. So they still need to get a pre-approval before they come into they need to get a pre-approval before they come into the country.
Yes.
So that has become really fashionable now, and that's another work stream for us that we've been able to create.
That's great. Now to backtrack a little bit in terms of how you have been working with Relocation Africa, can you shed some light, particularly for me, since I'm the new kid on the block?
Oh, okay.
How long have you been working with us? And tell me a little bit about that relationship and how it's evolved over the years, because I understand that you've been working with Relocation Africa for quite a while.
Yes, we've been working with Relocation Africa for like 6 years now.
Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
So it's been a very great relationship. We tend to have various requests from Relocation Africa with regards to consular work, with regards to visa applications, and it's a relationship that we have grown over the years. That's why I make visits like this to Cape Town, just to see how the business is fending, and also talk about opportunities that we see in the market, and see how we can harness those opportunities.
Yeah,
so Relocation Africa has been a great relationship, and we appreciate that relationship. We try as much as possible to share it with Renee every time see her, because they always ask for feedback, and it's been a great relationship.
No, it's great. I mean, as I said, your name and your practice has preceded you. I mean, that's all I really heard about when I started here.
Okay.
And I mean, just in terms of myself personally trying to get more acquainted with the industry, I have seen you and your constituents quite in the forefront when it comes to the expertise surrounding immigration and business, and it's really just fascinating. I know I've even participated in some of your webinars, so that has been a great learning for myself. So that's really great. So you talked about your coverage area. So can you sort of paint a picture about what, for those who don't know, so basically you're going to be giving sort of an immigration 101 to some of our listeners who may not have a clue about the immigration landscape in Nigeria. Can you give us just a small little glimpse into the immigration landscape, how it's looking, how the volumes are looking? I know you touched on that a little bit earlier, but just give us just sort of a snapshot.
Okay, so the immigration regulation that covers Nigeria is the Immigration Act, and the immigration regulation, they were published in 2015 and 2017 respectively.
Okay.
Now before the law was changed, the first one was published in 1962, so you can imagine how archaic that particular law was. But with the new act and the new regulation, it brought in a lot of changes.
Right.
And what they've tried to do is bring the Nigeria immigration law looking into global best practice, and trying to see how the law can be couched in such a way that it would also encourage foreign direct investment as well.
Yes.
Yeah. So that in a sense is what was at the back of the government's mind with the new law and the regulation, but also looking at how they can also protect local content as well. So those were the key platforms that they looked at to be able to publish the law. The government also recently published that's January 2020, recently published a new visa policy. So the visa policy hasn't been implemented yet.
Okay.
But it's introduced various visa categories that think about 67 new visa categories. So we're still trying to catch up with the number of visa categories. But what they've been able to do is they've looked at the current processes, global processes, and they've tried to match those global processes with the new visa categories. Introducing one that I really like is the investor visa.
I was going to ask which one would you.
That really stood out for me because quite a number of multinational companies are looking at how they can invest in the country, and they'll definitely want their people to be there to oversee those kind of investment.
Of course.
So in a sense, what the government has done is they've created various subcategories under the investor visa, which allows the company to determine which of the categories they fit in. And it also has various terms as well, up to a 5-year resident permit,
that's great.
Which is fantastic for particularly the high net worth or the very important employees now. So those are the regulations and the laws that the government have recently published. But the thing is in implementation. The implementation is what is critical.
Yes.
We are hoping that the government will announce when the laws when the visa policies will become effective at the end of the day.
Okay. What do you anticipate that timeline to look like? Do you think they'll do some pilots first?
I wish I had a crystal ball and I'll be able to tell you that, but unfortunately I don't have a crystal ball. That's the thing. we would hope that the government will announce when that will be done, because what we have seen is even some of the immigration officers are not even aware of the visa policy.
Yes.
So if they are not aware, then you cannot implement.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah.
So maybe what they are currently doing is trying to spread the word, or maybe trying to ensure that their embassies and the consulars have a general overview of the various provisions. So once I think that is done, they will now properly formally announce that we're good to go with the visa policy.
Do you think that the turning point for this type of policy would be to be more embracive of foreign nationals, to be able to give them more opportunities, which in essence would then help the country itself in terms of growing its own reach, the economy, and so on, all the sort of the domino positive effects that it would have, unlike a lot of other countries that are more restrictive, even with regards to corporate employees or corporate and multinationals.
So the government is trying to encourage foreign direct investment.
Yeah.
So anything that would bring foreign direct investment into the country, they're willing to do that, but also to protect the local content as well, particularly in the oil and gas industry.
Okay.
We have a local content board that actually handles the oil and gas industry.
Okay.
Now, what they do is that they ensure that the multinationals, the oil services companies, that they have a certain number of Nigerians that are either understudying foreign national, or that are filling some specific job designations.
Yes.
So if they feel that there's a job designation that we have enough Nigerians that can fill those positions, then there's no need for you to have foreign national in that. And that has actually worked.
Okay.
Because they've been around for about maybe 6 or 7 years now.
Okay.
And one can see even the effect with the clients that one deals with, where you have a number of Nigerians filling roles that ordinarily they won't have filled in the past. So it's I guess it's like a balancing act.
Yes.
Trying to encourage foreign direct investment, but also trying to ensure that the local people are still have enough opportunities for them in that industry. And they're looking at I think there's a bill now looking at other industries now, so not just the oil and gas industry.
Okay.
So they're also looking at the construction industry as well, although the bill hasn't been passed yet into law, but that you see where the government's mind is going.
That's really impressive, because not a lot of governments are really thinking that detailed in terms of isolating each industry and actually finding the data on how it's what the impact is really going to be if these types of policies are going to be implemented. Because at the end of the day, like you said, local content, you want the local people to be able to benefit, you want the country to be able to benefit, you just don't want someone to come and suck out all your resources. So that's actually very encouraging, and I'm sure just a forefront on the rest of the African continent too, because we're trying to, in South Africa, do what we can as well to I mean, there's so much frustration that's happening right now in terms of how the policies and procedures are changing and how it's not really foreign friendly, and how it's not direct foreign investment friendly, and why that is. South Africa is really trying to keep up with the rest of the world as well, but at the same time wants to protect, our local people, that they also have opportunities. But I think they sometimes lose hindsight vision on just not looking at the shorthand, but looking at the long term and the long term effects on people, not wanting people to go through so many hurdles, because what they want to do is they want to bring resources here, they want to bring skills here, they want to bring talent here, and they want to invest. So that can only be a win-win situation. Of course, there has to be requirements and procedures followed and restrictions, of course, because you still want to protect your country and the constituents that are with that. So, that's really kind of where we're at with that. And we actually had a meeting with our Minister of Department of Home Affairs, and he was quite open to hearing what we had to say. So thank you so much. So yeah, I mean that's really great to hear that things are kind of moving forward with this new policy. Do you think that the coronavirus will have any effect on this being implemented any faster?
That's like a trick question. It's unfortunate that the fact that we have this pandemic that is happening now when the global economy was starting to pick up. I believe the way the economy was going from 2019 into 2020 before the pandemic hit, there would have been more opportunities in 2020. Yes. However, with the coronavirus, it's definitely going to affect businesses.
Yes, it is.
And it's already hitting so many businesses at the moment. If you look at the hotel industry, for instance, if you look at the various flights that have been, I am aware that quite a number of flights have been cancelled.
Yes.
So many countries are looking at how they can block people coming in from various countries. The president of America, President Trump, was just recently announced the
travel ban.
The travel ban from Europe and including UK as well. And if you look at the amount of travel that happens between the UK and the US, that's a huge amount that's going to hit so many industries. And it's the same with Nigeria as well. It's the same with Africa.
Ask that.
It's the same with Africa as well. I was reading in the newspaper online this morning that the visa on arrival numbers with regards to visa on arrival has fallen about 39%.
Oh wow!
So which means that that's part of our business that has stalled. But as I always tell everyone, when you have such kind of situations, there are also opportunities as well.
Yes.
So what are the opportunities that are there?
Yes.
It's important that one sits down and just doesn't listen to it's good to listen to the doom and gloom.
Yes.
So it gives you perspective. However, it's also important that you begin to plan ahead and look at all the opportunities that are there. Look at how you can maximize on those opportunities.
Right.
I believe that there will still be an increase in the number of short-term assignments because people are still trying to figure out how the markets will be, and that's definitely after the dust has settled and each of the governments are able to say that we've been able to reduce the count and this is the numbers that we have now. And so there will be opportunities, but it's just how you are now able to harness those opportunities.
Yes.
So things like innovation will come into play, where you would have so many companies. I've gotten emails from so many companies now saying that they don't want to meet with people on a face-to-face basis, that they'll prefer to have conference calls, virtual calls. So those are the kind of things that will start to come into play. That do I really have to fly down to this meeting, this conference that we want to have? Do we really need to have everyone in one room. If we're able to harness technology? So that in itself will allow people to begin to think, I believe, proactively.
True.
And also filings as well. If we look at immigration, the Nigerian embassy in DC this morning or yesterday announced that they are no longer issuing visas and passports.
I was going to ask you about that, because with us, some of the immigration, if not all of the immigration visas, as of yesterday, have been cancelled.
Yes. So what that means, therefore, is that anyone that's looking at applying for a work permit that stays in DC will not be able to apply for that now until the embassy opens. The address, the consular stated that they're trying to protect their employees from the pandemic. So that's been shut for about 2-3 weeks now. So we just have to wait and see how that goes. So that's just, I believe that's going to be the ripple effect. And it's going to definitely hit businesses negatively.
And has your firm come up with a contingency plan in terms of how you're dealing with this virus and the current clients that you have that are already, in full operational swing on their assignments? How are you sort of coping with their questions and also trying to have your own contingency plan? Did you have one in place before this even happened?
Yes, for some clients that is part of the onboarding process. So questions like with regards to, will you be able to work remotely?
Yes.
If something like this happens.
Something.
So we have provisions for that. We have provisions for people to work from home, which we had actually been doing in the past.
Okay.
So that in a sense helps us now.
Yes.
It will just be a case of once you have the symptoms, don't come to the office, just stay at home and work from home until you get better. But we've also taken precautions with regards to, because we have individuals that meet with clients. For instance, if an expat comes into the country and we need to apply for his work permit, we need to pick up his passport, we need to pick up his documentation and before we file it. So we've made procedures available for anyone that is going to meet with, particularly those that are from high-risk countries. From high-risk countries. So but that carries across board now. So we're doing it for everyone.
For everyone.
Yeah, so
well,
if you're
you never know.
Yeah, so if you're coming in from any foreign country, we do that for them. So you would ordinarily not... you won't ordinarily hug them, but you won't shake them. You will pick up the documents. Once you pick up the documents, you have to use your hand sanitizer when you get to the office.
I was going to ask you just the particulars of that type of engagement. Yeah, so it's just like what we're all trying to do now is we don't shake hands, we sort of elbow the foot, or we don't try and breathe on each other, sanitizing.
Yeah. On a lighter note, I heard about the digital high five in Johannesburg.
Oh, there's a digital? Well, there we go.
Yeah.
Let me get you your coffee.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's so interesting because you start seeing all the memes and how people are going to engage.
Yeah,
but
so
particularly with those documents, we all know paper has most of the germs.
Yeah, so in a sense, you don't know what the person has been exposed to, because I think the key thing with the virus itself is the fact that it's really contagious.
Yes.
So if one is able to ensure that one keeps to all these standards that have been set, then I think we should be good.
You think? Yeah. So I'm hopeful in terms of the containment aspect. I think that right now, I know in South Africa we have 61 cases pending, and so. I think that with the closures, and I think South Africa has actually acted quite quickly and as efficiently as possible. To a lot of people it does seem extreme, but I think when you think of what needs to happen is the spread needs to stop. So it's not necessarily on you getting it or someone else getting it, it's actually just stopping it from spreading it has. We don't want to have it like Italy is just completely shut down and there's just crickets everywhere. There's no one on the street, and I'm sure that's the same in Nigeria. Yes. Did you have that type of address like they've done, like Trump did, like Cyril did last night here? Did you guys have this formalized address?
No, not yet. We haven't. Okay. But what they've done is that particularly because we have about 3 or 4 international airports. So they ensure that all those port of entries are protected, although we still have porous borders, which could come in through there. But what they've done is that for each of those the airports and also the seaports as well, they have constant monitoring of the body temperature. They ask you questions of where you have been. Yes. They ask you questions, and I think that's how they were able to catch the first case in Nigeria. It was an Italian national that flew in.
Yes.
So that, in a sense, has helped. Even the World Health Organization mentioned it, that Nigeria took proactive steps, which was, at least that's good news to hear about Nigeria.
Yes.
And that has helped in, I believe, keeping a lid on the numbers.
Yeah.
Although I believe the numbers may be more than that.
Yes.
But you see that the government has been proactive.
Yes.
They've also been proactive in communicating what the people need to do.
Yes.
Yeah, because there's a lot of misinformation out there.
Yes, there is.
And that has also helped.
Okay.
So people have been very cautious since December, actually.
Yeah, you were mentioning that earlier.
So that has been really helpful. That has been really helpful. I think there was a lot of denial.
Yeah.
In the beginning, even for governments as well.
Yes, I think
and so. Because of that, some governments are actually struggling now because they're trying to catch up. It's now reactive instead of being proactive.
Proactive, yeah.
So that is what is affecting them. But you would hope that at some point it will begin to subside.
Yes.
I believe that when the weather begins to change, like in all the cold temperate now, where you have people having flu and they think, oh, I have the flu, or maybe it's corona that I have.
Yeah.
So by that time, you will be able to have an idea of the specific number. There was an article I was reading. I'm not sure whether it's fake news now.
Or not, yeah.
The reason why we don't have that much in Africa is because of the heat.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
I just said we have such tough blood.
That
was my argument. We have African blood. Nothing's touching us.
Yeah, so the virus is not able to withstand the heat.
Okay.
So there's been a lot of remedies.
Yeah.
So I'm just hoping that by the time the weather improves in those countries, then they would see a reduction in the numbers.
Yes.
And they will now be able to confirm the specific number that have the
actual coronavirus as opposed to a different strand of influenza.
Maybe flu or something.
Yeah.
Once they're able to deal with that, hopefully it will subside.
Yes.
It will. It's not going to go.
No.
Like every common cold, it will still be there somewhere, but it won't be as it won't be a pandemic.
Yes. Yeah. So how do you reassure your current clients kind of that everything is gonna be okay, like that, because they're in panic mode now?
Yeah. So the thing is, for those clients that we service directly, we've tried as much as possible not to add to the panic. Yeah. So because a lot of hysteria, and they're getting everybody's bombarded with emails saying that, oh, this is what is happening, this is what is happening. So we've tried as much as possible to step back a bit. Those ones that we are close to, when we meet with them, we advise them that, oh, the volumes are very low in Nigeria from our records. Yeah. However, you have to ensure that you keep good sanitary conditions. You have to ensure that you're not hugging everyone. We have this culture as Africans to just keep hugging.
Yeah, it's been difficult. It's been difficult.
You see, but one has to just try and curtail that for now.
Yes.
And hope that by the time it subsides, we will be able to get round and get back to hugging each other.
I mean, do you find that they're okay with that answer? I mean, I'm sure that they
so for some
rely on that type of explanation, and particularly because you have such a good relationship with them, they would attest for it. Yeah,
so for some of the clients, for most of the clients we have, particularly those that work with multinationals, their companies would have even given them directive on what to do.
Yeah.
So most times, we're sounding more like a broken record to them because they've gotten layers and layers of advice on what they need to do. So we don't want to add to the panic. Yes. We're trying as much as possible to stay back, but when we meet with you, we tell you. Don't. These are the things that you need to watch for. These are the things that you need to watch out for.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's more of the panic.
Yes.
Than the corona itself.
Yes.
So if we can get the panic down, then we'll be able to deal with
corona. Exactly. That's so true. I want to also give I know that we're talking about just the goings on right now in the industry in terms of this global pandemic, but just to go back a little bit, I mean, I'm sure some of our listeners are just very curious to know a little bit about, you painted the landscape of immigration and the new visa policy and so on. What currently are the work permits that you're working on?
Okay.
And just give me a brief synopsis on each one.
Okay.
That would be helpful.
Okay, thank you. So if we go by the new visa policy that has just been issued, so there are three main categories. So there's the short visit visa, there is the short-term work visa, and there's also the permanent resident visa.
Okay.
So those are the three main categories. So under these categories, they now have subcategories.
Yes.
Now, so the short visit visa would entail visas like business visas.
Okay.
The visa on arrival.
Okay.
So there's a specialized visas for religion now, where you have. There's been a lot of South Africans coming to Nigeria.
Is it for religious workers, you mean?
No, for religious workers. So if you want to attend a church service, for instance.
So if you're like a priest or
you're
something
a priest,
like that. Okay, so not like a missionary or anything like that.
So
they're missionaries
to fall under that as well.
Oh, that's interesting.
So that is there's a short visit visa for that as well. So basically, the short visit visa is just for you to come in and do what you have to do and leave. You're not eligible to work with
I was going to say you can't work,
you
but
can
you can attend a conference, you can go to a meeting.
Yes, you can attend a meeting, you can attend a conference. And it's also eligible for the e-visa, which is a new electronic visa, which is a new process they've just introduced. Now, the electronic visa allows you to upload your application. And once you upload your application and it's reviewed and it's fine, then you are issued your visa on arrival. Okay. So you get a pre-approval, which would allow you to fly to Nigeria. Then your visa will be issued on arrival.
On arrival.
Yes.
On that note, though, South Africa also implemented the e-visa.
Okay.
But we're limited to visitors only. Is Nigeria also limited in that capacity?
Yes.
Do you think that we're also trying to figure out whether they will eventually move that along to include work permits? Do you think that will be the same in Nigeria? No.
I don't think they want to move it to work permits because work permits will require a bit more scrutiny.
Yes, and exactly right.
Than short visit visas.
Yeah.
So if you say that you're coming for a church event, then they'll allow you to come in for that. Yes. If you say you're coming in to work in a company, so does the company exist in the first place? Does the company have needs for what you want to what you're coming to do? So all those other things come into play, unlike a short visit visa. So that will take me to the second one, which is the short-term work visa.
Okay.
The short-term work visa applies to foreign nationals that are coming into the country to work for a short period.
Yes.
So the short period also includes the temporary work permit. So the temporary work permit is a single entry work visa that is issued to individuals that are coming to maybe install equipment, for instance, maybe to fix equipment that has broken down. Maybe they are coming to carry out an audit on a company. So that would apply to them. But under the short-term work visa, it also includes what we used to call the long-term work visa before, which is it's called an STR, subject to regularization visa. So when you get that visa, it allows you to come into the country and regularize your work permit, and you're allowed to stay for a year or 2 years. But it's subject to the company that is inviting you having an expatriate quota.
I was going to ask you about that. So
the company that's inviting you, the sponsor company, must have an expatriate quota, which would allow you employ the foreign national. So without the expatriate quota, you can't employ on a long-term work permit. So the government also has made provision for employment for up to 2 years. So usually the expatriate quota is valid for between 2 to 3 years, depending on the industry. Once the company obtains the expatriate quota, then usually the expatriate quota will contain the job designation. So there has to be a job designation. If you're coming in as an engineer, for instance, you have to have the qualifications of an engineer. Yeah. So you have to provide evidence of that to be able to
even get to the application stage.
Yes, exactly.
I see.
So
who does the qualification scrutiny? Do you have a particular body that does that? In South Africa, we have the qualifications authority, so they kind of do all of that and give you the ticket to go ahead.
Yeah, so usually it's the Federal Ministry of Interior that issues the expatriate quota. So they would have confirmed that you actually need those positions. Now, if it's an industry like the oil and gas industry, where there's the local content board. So you need to get the approval of the local content board before you now go to the Federal Ministry of Interior to get the expatriate quota. So
there's all these little steps there, the pre-step to the pre-step to the pre-step. Now, just on that note, I know for myself, it's interesting to see some of these businesses when you're saying that we're sort of transferring now from the long-term to more short-term assignments. How is the government or the bodies that are enforcing immigration policies and procedures? Is it also the foreign? You said the foreign ministry.
So the Foreign Ministry of Interior issues the expatriate quota, but ensuring compliance and regulation of the Immigration
Act and regulations,
is handled by the Nigerian Immigration Service.
The NIS, okay.
Yeah, so the Nigerian Immigration Service is under the purview of the Federal Ministry of Interior.
I see.
Yeah, so that's the supervising ministry.
I see.
So the ministry controls first of all the regulations.
Okay.
So they are the ones that issued the visa policy, the recent visa policy, and you would have the Nigerian Immigration Service managing and ensuring compliance with the various regulations.
So they really work together. Do you feel like there's consistency in between those bodies? Do you feel like things flow really well? Are they in constant contact? Are they on the same page with regards to policies and procedures? Because here in South Africa, we find that there's so much disconnect between Department of Labour, Department of Trade and Industry, and then the Department of Home Affairs. Yeah, so I want to know, what are your secrets in making things
I think it's an African thing running across the African borders. It's not really a South African thing. It's an African thing.
Yeah.
Because we have that same problem as well.
Okay.
So you will have, for instance, that you need to get approval from the local content board before you apply for a temporary work permit. So the Immigration Service would issue you with a pre-approval, which is called a cablegram.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So once they issue you with the cablegram, you can apply for the visa. But the local content board will say that you need to get approval from them before you can go to the Nigerian Immigration Service. And the Nigerian Immigration Service will say no.
Send you back to them. Oh my God.
So in a sense, there's a bit of disconnect. There's a disconnect with tax as well.
Okay.
So with regards to the Immigration Service reaching out to the tax authorities, you would have expected them to align to ensure that they monitor personal income tax for foreign nationals.
Okay.
But they don't.
Okay.
So that, in a sense, is where there's a lot of disconnect as well, and I believe Nigeria loses a lot of revenue as a result of that. So if you have individuals coming into the country to work for 2 months, how do they monitor that?
Yeah.
Although some states are able to monitor it, but not all the states.
Yeah.
So and a lot of revenue is lost as a result of that.
Oh,
but once they start to, the bodies start to connect, then you would see a lot of opportunities for them. They would be able to harness a lot of the revenue they are losing out at the moment.
Yes. That's interesting. Well, I mean, we're also in hopes that there's more consistency in terms of how that everybody is sort of on the same page and talk to each other. So, the minister did say that they're going to try and have more periodic meetings with the heads of all those bodies just to make sure that everything is aligned. So, to prevent any more of these delays and frustrations and sort of erroneous rejections that we've been having lately. with the work permits and so on. So so it's good to know that it's not just us.
So I think it's an African theme.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk about the third one, which is the permanent resident visa, which is a category for individuals that are foreign nationals that are looking at retiring in Nigeria. So,
do you have a high volume of people that would want to retire?
Not as much as Johannesburg, not as much as South Africa. You would have more here, but there are a couple of individuals that will look at that. For instance, for foreign nationals that have worked in the country for a long time, maybe they came in as bachelors.
Yes, and now they have a family.
And they now have a family there. They would look at how they can settle with their family there. You would also have individuals that have set up companies for many years, and their family has been living with them in Nigeria for quite a long time. So they also look at this instead of them having to, there's a name for it now, I seem to have forgotten, for them to be registered as Nigerians. You can just have this permanent resident visa, which makes a lot of sense.
Is the permanent residence visa indefinite, or do you have a pathway to being naturalized as a Nigerian citizen?
So that's the word I was trying to remember.
You're welcome.
So instead of going down the path of naturalization, you can just get the permanent resident visa. So which means that you still have your country of birth status. Okay. So in a sense, what that means therefore is that once you have this permanent resident visa, you're allowed to stay in the country. Okay. And depending for some countries like the US now, I think it's to the validity of your passport. So if your passport is valid for 10 years or to 15 years, then the permit will be valid for that long.
For that long.
Yeah. Okay. So when your passport expires, then you can come back and renew it. Okay. Renew the permanent resident status.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And that is that also will extend to dependents and partners.
Yes. So it will extend to dependents. Now that word partners, because I'm in South Africa now, we need to clarify that.
Yeah, please do.
So Nigeria doesn't recognize what's it called now? Same-sex relationships. Yeah, so they don't recognize it. You have to provide evidence of marriage. That's a certificate, marriage certificate.
And of course, it has to be heterosexual.
It has to be heterosexual.
Okay.
It doesn't recognize same-sex couples. So, in a sense, it's always important that one advises, because we've had quite a number of cases where the clients will come to us and say that they have a same-sex partner. Yeah. How do they come into the country? Yeah. So we tell them they can't be in the country as a partner. Yeah. They probably need to visit with maybe a visitor's visa.
Sure. Or they need to get a work permit in their own right.
Yes. So they have another company that sponsors, but they have to have another company that sponsors the work permit. Yeah. So.
Does Nigeria recognize common law marriage?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
And what's the statute for that? How many years do you have to have been together, and what type?
So when you say common law marriage, just for clarification, is it the UK kind of common law marriage where you've lived together?
When you've been cohabitating for a long time. No, so you do not have that. So what is the definition for common law marriage in Nigeria?
So when you say common law marriage, we would mean heterosexual.
I see.
When they go,
so traditional
marriage.
Oh, I see. Okay, so
So we don't recognize partnerships.
Or actual contractual.
No.
I see. Okay, because common law marriage in a lot of countries just means that you're not necessarily technically married, but you live like a married couple. Your assets are together. You cohabitate together, and there's like sometimes a statute of limitations or the amount of years that you have to be at minimum. It's like 7 years in some places and so on. If you had children and all that kind of stuff. So that's not something. So common law really is a reference to traditional heterosexual marriage. Right. Do you anticipate Nigeria evolving into that and embracing same-sex couples?
No, because Nigeria is a a religiously diverse country.
Okay.
And the government has, as much as possible, had to protect the interest of the various religious authorities. So I don't think
you don't think that in the near future.
It's even a crime because so it's a crime.
I was going to ask you. So it's actually a criminal act.
Yes. So it's not safe.
So it's not safe. Yeah. So you probably not discourage, but I would say forewarn your clients who happen to be in those types of partnerships.
Yeah, so we would advise them from the onset.
Yes.
So, but we've seen cases where the company would really want the individual to work in Nigeria, maybe because of their expertise, or maybe because they've been in the company for a long time, in the international company for a long time. So there would always be ways to work around it, but it definitely won't be able to live in the country as a married couple.
I see. Yeah. So the short-term work, short visit visa, and the permanent residence are. And pertaining to all of that, do you think those are kind of the three set ones now, and then the rest will just be add-ons? Do you anticipate any changes within those three core ones?
No. So those three are the main categories, and the others are all under these categories. So they are subcategories.
So they're subcategories.
Yeah, so you will have under the short visit visa, the entertainment visa for musicians and actors that are coming into the country. That they would fall under that. There's an internship visa as well, which was recently introduced as a short-term visa as well. So if you want to carry out an internship, that would also apply. So the I'm not sure whether it's 69 or 79 categories, subcategories.
Unreal.
Yes. Have looked at the various issues that people have in Nigeria when they're trying to come in, and they try to address that. But where I believe they may struggle is the implementation, because even with the number of visa categories we have now currently, you still have some embassies struggling with advising on which visa category to apply for. If we have advised a client that they need to get a short-term work permit, but they get to the embassy and the consular officer tells them that, oh no, you don't need a temporary work permit for this, just go in with a business visa. But we know that that's non-compliant.
Yes. So we've had that happen as well.
Yeah. So that in a sense shows the kind of struggle we are already experiencing with, and it usually happens with embassies that have low volumes. So if the embassy doesn't have that many volumes, that means they don't treat that many cases, then they won't be able to advise.
Yeah, their experience is also limited.
Yes, exactly.
Being able to administer
exactly. It. So that will be an issue when it comes to implementation. We've tried to simplify the new visa policy. We put it in a table, and we were able to now point out the various visa categories and their subcategories. So it makes it easy for any of our clients to be able to go through, instead of going through, I think it's about 150 or 180 pages, the new visa policy.
Wow.
Yeah, so we've been able to reduce it to about maybe 20 pages or 25
That's
pages.
Fantastic.
So that would help the client be able to pick out which of the visas apply to them. They'll be able to there's a new, if I may, there's a new visa category that I also really like, which is under the short-term work visa. Now it's a short-term work visa as well, but it's a multiple entry short-term work visa. And I think the reason why they did that is for foreign nationals in the oil and gas industry. Now, in the past, what they used to apply for was the temporary work permit, which is a single entry work visa valid for 2 months.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's actually
but because they do they spend some time offshore and they spend some time onshore, it means that they have to come and go back offshore. So with this new 6-month multiple entry visa. It means that you can come in for the 2 months, leave for a month, come in for another 2 months, and leave for another month as well.
Okay, so you have to just be in country for 2 months.
Yes. So it depends on how their contract is structured.
Okay.
So if you have a 6-month multiple entry visa, it means that you can come and go for maybe 3 times while the visa is still valid. Unlike before, when you had to apply for the visa 3 times.
Okay. Which is quite a burden.
Yeah, but we are happy with it. we are not complaining about it, but at the end of the day, it's truly a burden if you have to keep doing that same process. So that 6 months would really be helpful. From our feelers, I believe it's going to be similar to what we have with the STR visa. That's the subject to regularization visa, where you have to get a visa to come in. Mm-hmm. When you enter the country, you now regularize your stay by getting the resident permit. So I think you will be issued with a resident permit as well, which will be valid for that 6-month period.
Okay.
Yeah, but it hasn't been implemented yet.
Yeah, so you wouldn't.
We're still
waiting for that to happen.
Yeah.
Interesting. When you're talking about embassies, can you tell us whether there are any particular countries that you find a little challenging? Because I know for South African immigration, there's quite a few that we find that are quite challenging.
I'll need to do an epistle. So the problem with the embassies is that I believe it's the volumes.
Okay.
So if you receive a high volume of applications, that means that you would have the experience, and you'll be able to advise the client on which visa category they need to apply for. Okay. But for those that do not have the volumes, then they will struggle.
Yes.
And also there are some embassies that their consular officers are not really that well trained.
Yes.
And we've had issues in the past where we've advised the client that this is the correct category, but they get to the embassy and they tell them, no, you don't need this, you can do that as well.
Yeah.
And there's
that's the struggle. Yeah.
And there's also the third thing, which is I think really massive as well, which is the white elephant in the room.
Yes.
Corruption.
Yes.
So some consular officers are quite corrupt, and in a sense they misadvise the client, or you would have them making the process bureaucratic.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, the client will say, okay, so how do I resolve this? And then I'll say, I can help you if you give me a certain amount. So those are the 3. I don't want to mention. You see that I've been able to dodge the question.
I noticed that I let you go with it though.
Yeah, I've been able to dodge the question because it's everywhere. As you have some good embassies, you have some bad embassies as well.
Yes.
We are hoping that the government would create a training platform similar to what they have in the US. The US has a training platform for all their consular officers, which can be done online. Now, so with that training program, it ensures that the process is streamlined in all the countries. Because I don't know whether you have experienced it. You reach out to a particular embassy and they'll tell you this is the list of documents. But you reach out to another embassy and they'll tell you no.
No, it's a completely different list.
And it shouldn't be that.
It shouldn't be like that.
It shouldn't be like that. It should be because if you go to the US embassy, sorry to be comparing, but if you go to the US embassy in somewhere that's the same process as, they may have some tweaks here and there, but it won't be like the documents are totally different. You need to get your mother's birth certificate before you.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. They are pretty consistent in terms of that. I mean, no, but I guess the struggle then is across the board that there needs to be more consistency and cohesiveness in terms of how each embassy is administrating these requirements, because Because then for practitioners, it can be a rock and a hard place, because if you're advising your clients and then they go to these embassies and they're getting these contradictory kind of feedback, and then they come look at you and be like, Kunle,
sometimes it makes you
told
question,
me I didn't need this.
So it makes you question what you have been telling them. But that's another reason why in 2017 I had to write a book on immigration.
Okay. Is this the corporate immigration book?
No. There's a Nigerian immigration law and practice.
Okay. Actually, I think I have that.
Oh, okay.
But I still need to read.
So what we've been able to do with the book is, first of all, for practitioners to have an understanding of the process. Because before we wrote the book, there's been no publication on immigration in Nigeria. Then also for the immigration officers as well, for them to be able to understand the processes.
Yes.
So for what we saw before we wrote the book were pockets of information, and what we've been able to do is bring everything together and now be able to first educate, because you'll be surprised the amount of misinformation that's out there. Then also be able to align the thoughts of everyone with regards to the various regulations. Because you find out that as practitioners, this is what we do on a daily basis. So we have a general, a better understanding of the process. And also because we deal with other immigration practitioners from other countries, we see the gap. So we're able to advise the government.
No problem.
You're about to advise government on the various changes that are required. So that's why the book was published. And the plan is that by the third quarter of this year, hopefully the second edition will be out.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yes. So because of the new visa policies and also the various changes that have happened between 2017 and now, so we're going to looking forward to that.
Oh, I'm sure. Are you in the process, or have you finished the second edition?
No. So we've started the process.
Okay.
We're currently editing.
Okay.
Yeah. So hopefully by the third quarter of this year we would publish. I'll definitely send your complimentary copy.
I would really appreciate that. That would be great.
So I think that's where the problem lies, the pockets of information, and some embassies, the consular officers are not well trained.
Yeah, I think that's really the same from our side as well, from South African immigration in particular. We just don't feel like, I think it's very bureaucratic. I don't think that they are actually analyzing cases on a case-by-case basis, because you can have your procedures and your policies, but you have to be able to kind of look at the uniqueness and the circumstances of each case, and they don't have that capacity, unfortunately, some of them. But I think a training program is something that I don't even really know if they have something like that. I don't think that they do. And there has to be consistent follow-up in terms of, if you're saying that there's 50%, 60% rejections, I mean, that's a problem. Where is that coming from? So go to the root of the problem, and look at the adjudicators, hopefully, maybe someone will write a book about South African immigration.
And I think another problem is that you would have, what happens is that when there's a new consular officer and he doesn't really know about the process, he's trained by those he meets in the embassy. So if those ones do not know,
it just continues to the next person.
But if you have a standard process where you train them, I'm sure they would have. It's not rocket science. I'm sure they would have.
It isn't.
So if they have that, then it's easy for them to be able to say this is best practice for us, and you won't have 50 or 60%.
It's actually quite disturbing at that rate. So, well, it's interesting because a lot of South African practitioners in particular have said that bodies like the Department of Home Affairs doesn't like third-party representations. Do you find that that's the same in Nigeria, that they don't look favorably on Bloomfield law practice, or because this would be my instinct if I was a government official. I'd say, look, we don't really understand the process because we're not on the ground fulfilling these cases on a day-by-day basis. We haven't been seeing the trends and things like that. We just kind of have our little list and tick off the boxes. Why don't we get people in who actually do all this work, have the expertise, have the skills for this, and advise us on what's the best way to adjudicate these cases. I mean, but then, on the other hand, they're like, we don't really like them.
Yeah, so a number of embassies, particularly for consular work for us, a number of embassies do not allow third-party visa applications. So we would probably have the main assignee or the foreigner available for the submission. But most times it's the outbound work that we usually have that problem with. If we're dealing with a Nigerian embassy, because we've been in the system for a while, we tend to know people in the various
departments and so on.
Various embassies and the consular offices.
Oh, okay.
So we're able to reach out to them and say that, please look at this application again.
Yes.
This person has all this and all that, and then the chances that they would overturn their decision are quite high.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, so we tend to leverage that as well. But if it's with regards to outbound work, where you're applying for a visa application for somebody that's already in Nigeria to leave, then there are some embassies that do not allow third-party visa applications. So the person has to be there, and then we would have we would have compiled the documents.
Okay.
If there's any online visa application forms that need to be filled, we would have done all that. So we'll just follow them on that day, and maybe we would also make the payments as well.
Okay.
At the bank or the designated payment place. Then all they need to do is just be there.
Yeah,
and
be present.
sign whatever they need to sign and leave.
Oh, interesting.
So some embassies don't, but we've not had issues with Nigerian embassies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. That's really good to know. So you were saying that there have been a lot of changes in terms of legislation between 2017 and now.
Yeah.
Minus the visa policies, and I think recently, didn't you mention that there was a e-registration that needed to take place?
Yes.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So so the government has been trying to do that for quite a while, but they eventually kicked off, I think it was August 2019. What the government was trying to know was to identify the foreign nationals that are in country. Now, with those that are on work permits, they already have their records, but they didn't have their biometrics.
Okay.
So what they wanted to do, what the program was for, was to get the biometric details, get their addresses, get as much information as possible to know where each foreign national was at each point. Now, the plan was to target Africans from other African countries.
Okay.
So just to have an idea of the number.
Okay.
So because they already have a record of those that have long-term work permits.
Okay.
Because once you buy a SEPAC, then you have to have your details taken.
Okay.
However, they don't have an idea of the number of Africans because the borders are porous. You could just walk across from Cameroon, from Benin Republic. So you could just walk into the country. So that's what they wanted to do. And that they've been able to gather a lot of information and have details with regards to their addresses, for instance. So they have records, they have their biometrics taken as well. So once they are entering the country, they take your biometrics. Once you're leaving the country, they take your biometrics now at the various international airports. So it's just to create a database of all foreigners.
Okay.
And
so it's really for census purposes. Or do you think there's other motivations?
For census and also for them to monitor as well, because the Immigration Act has a section that provides for monitoring foreign nationals that are in the country.
Okay.
So if you want to lease a property, for instance, the landlord is supposed to get your information.
Yes.
And you're supposed to provide that information to the immigration service.
Okay.
Now, if you fail to do that, the landlord will be liable.
Okay, that was my question. So
yeah.
the type of repercussions for this registration process, would the burden then fall onto the employer?
Yes.
Or would the burden be on the employee to make sure that they register? Or is this also a condition of stay in terms of what the rights and obligations are for the employer and the employee?
So it's mostly on the employer because you have a sponsor. You can't self-sponsor.
Yes.
As a foreign national. So you have to have a sponsor company. So the obligation lies with the sponsor company. It's important to know that even in the Act, there are penalties. Financial penalties have been created in the Act for sponsor companies that fail to carry out some specific tasks. And those penalties run into thousands and thousands of US dollars. Yeah, so the obligation is more on the employer. That's the sponsor company than the employee.
Do you find that there's, in your experience in the last sort of 13 years, and I'm just sure, have you been practicing longer than that? Than the 13 years that Bloomfield's been around? What were you doing before that?
Oh, so before I was actually a litigator.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I was I did litigation for about 7-8 years.
Okay, wow.
Before Bloomfield came into existence.
The picture. Wow.
Yes. So don't be deceived by the face.
You look so young.
don't be deceived by the face. Yes. So I was a litigator, and the funny story about, if I can share this.
Oh, of course.
It's like an exclusive. The funny story about immigration was that so we had when we set up Bloomfield, I had the website done. But the immigration I had in mind when I put on the website was for immigration with regards to individuals, Nigerians that applied for the UK visa. You know, at some point when you apply for the UK visa and you are refused, you have a right of appeal. That was ages ago. And when you have to write an appeal, that's like an appeal brief. And which was, because I was a litigator, that was something I was used to, writing appeal briefs.
Yes, yeah.
And the success rate was really high because it was something that I was used to.
Yes.
So I was getting maybe 70-80% success rate.
Wow.
And the people don't even need to appear, because once you send in your appeal brief and they read it and they see it's fine, they'll send the letter to the embassy, and the embassy would issue the visa. And that was the visa I had, that was the immigration I had in mind.
Wow.
When I put it on the website. Then along the line, I had a client that wanted to find out about work permits. And I didn't know anything about work permits.
Not a clue.
So I learned I had to learn on the job as well.
Wow.
So along the line, started to work for a couple of clients on work permits and all that. Then around 2009, 2010, there was a huge volume in Nigeria around that period, and we were just there at that time. So we just rode the wave at that time, and that's how.
And that's worked out for you very well. Hey?
That's how I ended up in immigration. But it's been an interesting experience because it's opened up the various opportunities that exist in the market.
Yeah.
And how one can properly harness it.
Yes.
Because you would have pockets of individuals that do not really understand the process, and maybe they try and get through the system in funny ways. I'm trying to be really nice here.
Yeah.
Then you now find out that the client has difficulty with either the immigration service, and funny demands are made, but once you have people that understand the process, even the immigration service will be wary of making any funny demands because they know that you understand the process.
Yes.
So
that you're competent in that area.
Yes. So that has been that wave that we have we rode to where we are.
Yeah. Well, it's been working out for you, clearly.
Yeah.
You're like, so far, so good.
I'll take your word for that.
No, that's so interesting. But yeah, I mean, just in terms of harnessing opportunities, I know that for work permits, it requires sponsorship. There's no self-sponsorship. Is Bloomfield allowed to sponsor if there's no registered entity in the country? So we are not allowed to sponsor work permits. Okay.
But what we can sponsor are visa on arrivals. Okay. So the visa on arrival is like a business visa. So if we have a client that's coming in for the first time just to see how the market works or have business meetings, then we can invite them to come into the country to do that. But if it's a work permit, that means that the person will be working for you directly.
Yeah.
And we can't do that.
That's not allowed.
Yes.
They have to have a registered entity.
There has to be a registered entity.
Okay. Is the registration process pretty simple for a company who wants to set up like a subsidiary or something like that?
Yeah, so the government recently set up a department for ease of doing business. That's what it's called. So part of what they've been able to achieve is to ensure that the process of registration or incorporation of a local entity is quite fast. So you can have one registered in maybe a week.
Okay. Yeah, that seems a lot of the African countries are taking about 7 to 10 days.
Yeah. So like a week you can have an entity registered. For some other approvals that you may require, some other permits you may require, it may take longer than that. Yeah. Depending on your industry, for instance. Yes. So if you're in the oil and gas industry, there are layers and layers and layers of approval. That's our mainstay for now. So in a sense, there's so many layers and layers of regulatory approvals that you need to get. But if you're in an industry like IT, for instance, so you should be up and running in like 3 weeks. Should be up and running. That includes getting offices, getting. Okay. Yeah.
So really getting fully operational.
Yes, you should be able to do that in 3 weeks. Thereabout.
Okay. All right. So with going back to policies and procedures and the change, any of the changes that's happened between 2017 and now, is there anything in additional that has changed or updated that we haven't talked about?
None that I can think of at the top of my head. As I said, the essence of all the various changes that the government has been driving has been to ensure that there's an increase in foreign direct investment. Yeah. And that in itself is what has been the mainstay for the government to see how they can do that. Because there's been a reduction in foreign direct investment. Yeah. And there have been a lot of divestments as well from the oil companies, the international, the IOCs. They've been divesting, quite a number of them have been divesting investments into other African countries or into other countries at the moment. So there's been a lot of, we've done a lot of outbound work for Nigerians going to other African countries like Mozambique, Angola, Congo DR. We've also seen a lot of movement into the Arabian countries. The UAE, Oman, Saudi Arabia, so Qatar as well. So there's been been a lot of movement towards those countries, particularly in the oil and gas industry. Yes. Because there's a huge number of Nigerian engineers that, because of the various divestments from the oil, the IOCs that are looking at opportunities in other other African countries.
So do you have, in order to facilitate those cases, to fulfill those cases, do you have partners in those other countries that help fulfill those cases, or do you do all the groundwork?
So we do the work in Nigeria.
Okay.
Things like having your document procurement, document legalization, maybe applying for the visa as well for some countries.
Okay.
So we do all that work, but the company would have another provider in those countries.
Yes.
Who would have carried out, or maybe they do it in-house.
Okay.
Would have carried out getting the documentation, maybe from the Ministry of Labor or all the various regulatory bodies that they need to get before we now get to apply for the visa.
So is there anything else that you can think of that you'd like to share as we wrap up, that you foresee happening in the industry in 2020?
Oh, okay. It's when you need a crystal ball once again. So the thing is, there would be, which is something we've seen, a reduction in the number of long-term work permits as companies cut back.
Okay.
As companies cut back on their spending with regards to assignees moving to various countries. But there would be an increase in short-term work authorization as well, which is what we have been seeing.
Yeah.
But there would be a further increase in that.
Yes.
Because as companies cut back, they still have to have these guys on ground. They still have to look at how they can protect their investments.
Yes.
But they won't have them coming long time again.
Yeah.
So it will be more of short-term visits. There will be an increase in visa on arrivals as well, when everything with the corona has settled down. Yeah. I believe it's going to hit, as I mentioned earlier, it's going to hit a lot of companies. It's already hitting a lot of companies. So it's just how they are now able to, after the dust has settled, be able to look at their own strategies.
Yeah.
And be able to work on those strategies to ensure that they reduce costs.
Yes.
First of all, cost of movement for the assignees.
Yes.
Also, how they are able to manage relocation as well. They would look at, I guess it's just a cost thing. So we also will probably need to take a hit at some point as service providers, where they come to you and say that, oh, we can't do the same figures that we were doing in the past. You have to give us a discount or something. So that would happen as well. But as I said, I always like to look at, and it's always important to end on a positive angle, have a positive angle to it, where you would look at what are the things that we as relocation service providers can advise the client even before they come to us. So they will still know that, oh, instead of saying, no, we are cutting back on even our relocation costs, we still need these guys. So at the end of the day, and because the way Africa is still known as the uncharted terrain for so many people, they would still come back to us to still ask. But I believe we are the ones that need to go to them first and say that, oh, this was how you were doing this before. Why don't you look at doing it like this? And so in a sense, they know that you are still there. And
and you can still be a resource.
Instead of slashing the budget and saying, no, let's move everything in-house, because that's the competition.
Yes, I was going to ask
so
you about
the competition is moving it in-house and having everything done in-house. Particularly
and not
with
outsourcing much anymore.
So it's how we remain relevant, maybe by innovation, maybe by technology. How we remain relevant, that is critical for us as service providers.
That's great. Well, thank you so much. It was so nice